Hi, Cynthia from So English Fabrics. I'm here to help you select the right knit fabric for your pattern. In addition to this video, we also have a fabric guide available on our website and also a blog post just to give you some more complete and detailed information to make sure that you are selecting the right fabric for your project. When you are selecting fabric for your project, I would like you to keep 4 key components in mind. First, we have weight, and this is the physical weight of your fabric, sometimes measured in GSM or grams per square meter. Number 2, we have drape. Drape simply means how the fabric lays when worn with your finished final garment, and the weight of your fabric can also affect the drape. We also have stretch, and stretch can vary depending on the content of the fabric fibers, if there is any spandex content within the fabric. Lastly, we have recovery, and stretch and recovery can sort of go hand in hand together. Stretching the fabric and then letting it go will tell you how quickly the fabric recovers. And some fabrics might be able to have a lot of stretch, but not so good with the recovery. So if you think about waistbands or cuffs where you need some of that support, where the fabric will sort of want to pull back in on itself after it's been stretched, that will help you determine the recovery of your fabric. It is important when you are selecting the fabric to consider all of these factors together in a balanced form, depending on the specific pattern that you are using. So let's go ahead and take a look at each one of these individual components.
Let's take a look at weight and drape together. Weight is the physical weight of 1 yard of fabric, often measured in grams per square meter. The higher the GSM, the heavier the fabric. We often describe fabrics as light, medium, or heavy weight. The weight of a fabric will also affect the drape. Fabric drape is important depending on the type of garment you are creating. Think of how different substances may pour from a bucket. Water is very fluid and flows easily. Something like concrete would pour much more slowly, and you may even see structured ripples as the concrete pours and settles. The same is true with fabric. Fabrics with lighter drape will have a flowier, looser fit, while fabrics with a heavier drape will have more structure and may fit closer to the body. The following examples will progress from lightest weight knit to the heaviest, and you will see how the weight of the fabric affects the drape. This is a rayon spandex, a lightweight knit with a very fluid drape. You can see how well it moves and pools into gentle ripples as it settles. This is a great choice for patterns with gathers or flutters, as it is lighter in weight and will not drape heavily. This is double brush poly, a light to medium weight knit, still has a very nice drape. It's a slightly heavier fabric than the rayon spandex, but this still works well for a range of garments, from fitted to more of a looser fit. This is cotton modal spandex, a medium weight that retains some drape with a little bit of body or substance to the fabric. You can probably see as we progress through these different fabrics how the weight is affecting the drape. This isn't a heavy fabric, but due to the cotton content, it provides a gentle body and stability. This is ponte, still in a medium weight, but a bit heavier than the cotton modal and a little bit more structure becoming apparent in the folds of the fabric. This type works very well for tops like a peplum style, where it is desirable to have a bit of structure to hold the fabric away from the body and for the fabric to retain its shape. This is a quilted knit entering the heavier weight category. Very soft, but you can start to see we have less drape with more structure than the last. The gentle structure here lends well to garments like hoodies or zip-up jackets where you do prefer a more stable hand and drape. Super Plush is one of our heaviest knits. It's wonderfully soft and cozy, but readily apparent it is heavier with much less drape. It's made just for us and perfect for hoodies, jackets, and even winter joggers. Stretch is very important when working with knits. Fabrics may contain 2-way or 4-way stretch. These classifications simply mean the fabric may only stretch across the grain, two-way stretch, or both across the grain and with the grain, four-way stretch. Stretch across the grain is referred to as horizontal stretch. Stretch with the grain is referred to as vertical stretch. Visualizing a roll of fabric, the grain line will run parallel to the selvage, which is a finished edge from the factory. The grain line will run with the length of the fabric from cut edge to cut edge. The width of the fabric will be from selvage to selvage. The bias we won't concern ourselves with much for knits, as it is mostly used when working with woven fabrics that do not have horizontal or vertical stretch, but slight natural stretch along the bias. Most, but not all knit fabrics will have the greatest stretch across the grain, or horizontal stretch. The key word is greatest stretch. This is why it becomes important to test the stretch of your fabrics before beginning your project. If, for instance, I am working with a fabric that has a greater vertical rather than horizontal stretch, I may position my pattern pieces so that the grain line marking is oriented across the grain rather than with the grain. You can measure the direction and degree of stretch yourself with a rigid ruler. Using this method, a simple formula is the amount your fabric stretched beyond its original length divided by the original length equals the stretch multiplied by 100 equals the stretch percentage. This is double brush poly. It is a knit with great four-way stretch. And using this method, I can calculate the horizontal stretch as well as vertical stretch. To test the horizontal stretch, I will fold the fabric so that I am stretching between the selvages. Test away from the edge and hold the fabric to the start of the ruler. Without stretching, grasp the fabric 5 inches away from the start and stretch until you meet resistance. This fabric stretched to 10 inches, so using the formula, we see that the amount stretched beyond the original length equals 5 inches. Divided by the original length of 5 inches equals 1. 1 times 100 equals 100. So this fabric has 100% horizontal stretch across the grain. We can also measure the vertical stretch of this fabric using the same method, except this time I will fold my fabric along the grain parallel to the selvage. This fabric stretched to 8 inches or 3 inches beyond the original measurement. Therefore, based on our formula, this fabric has 60% vertical stretch with the grain. Since the horizontal stretch was 100%, that means the greatest stretch of this fabric is across the grain. Let's view a fabric with less stretch that would be classified as a two-way stretch fabric. This is a French terry that has about 50% horizontal stretch and really only about 10 to 20% vertical stretch. With the vertical stretch below about 20%, we may just refer to this as vertical give. Direction of stretch depends on your pattern and the type of garment, but don't shy away from fabrics with only two-way stretch. They can work beautifully for tops, tees, mini dresses, and even some pants or shorts. Review your pattern to determine if your pattern requires four-way stretch fabric. If the final garment will be smaller than your body, meaning it needs to stretch a lot in both directions, you may need a fabric with four-way stretch. If you are new to sewing, take a look at some of the items in your closet and consider how they fit, and then test the horizontal as well as vertical stretch. This will help you understand when and where you may need two-way versus four-way stretch. Lastly, we have recovery. Recovery is like recoil. It is how the fabric bounces back after being stretched. This is very important when working with knits and balanced with the stretch component. Consider a waistband without elastic or a drawstring. How does it hold your pants up? It has balance, stretch, and recovery. The stretch allows you to pull them over your hips, but then it recoils and pulls in when it reaches your waist. That's recovery. Some fabrics will have good stretch, but not recovery. Things like cotton spandex, double brushed poly, ponte, performance, or swim all have great recovery. You can measure recovery similar to measuring stretch. If the fabric snaps back to the original length without distortion, it has good recovery. If the original length that was stretched is now longer, the fabric has poor recovery. I like to think of recovery in terms of soft versus firm, and you may hear these terms used to describe the stretch, hand, or recovery of a fabric. Let's look at a few examples ranging from poor recovery to great recovery. This is rayon spandex. It has great four-way stretch, but after being stretched to its max, it will recoil some, but it will be stretched out and somewhat distorted. The poor recovery makes it unsuitable for things like waistbands, cuffs, or fitted garments like leggings because as it stretches with wear, the lack of recovery will allow the garment to sag and appear baggy. This type of fabric is better suited for flowier tops, dresses, and cover-ups. This is double brush poly. The stretch is a bit more firm. It takes more force for me to stretch it, and the fabric recoils faster when I let it go. It is not distorted or stretched out. This fabric has a good recovery and suitable for bands, cuffs, waistbands, as well as fitted garments and leggings. This is our nylon ponte. You can see here the stretch and recovery are firmer. This is an excellent choice for bands, cuffs, waistbands, and even leggings or slim leg pants due to the great recovery. This is a yoga performance. Similar to the ponte, this has great four-way stretch, but even more firm as it takes more strength for me to stretch the fabric and it recovers even quicker. This is due to the higher spandex content as well as the type of knit. With a higher degree of recovery, this fabric will provide some compression, which is desirable for supportive waistbands as well as athletic wear.
Now that you've had a chance to see all of these 4 key factors up close, you might have a little bit better understanding of why I may have chosen this particular fabric for my cover-up that I'm wearing. I wanted a very light, breezy, flowy summer cover-up that was breathable, so I chose modal. And the result that I got has this gorgeous fluid drape, I have the kimono style sleeves, and it's just perfect. But had I chosen a fabric that had a heavier weight or a more structured drape, something like a ponte, my garment would have changed the look and appearance. It would have been more structured, more fitted to the body, and I just wouldn't have had the same appearance. It's always important for you to remember to review the specific requirements for your pattern, including stretch requirements, and just consider how these 4 key factors will play a role into your overall final result. As always, we love seeing all of your creations with your beautiful SSE fabrics, so please continue to share them with us within our Facebook group. Thank you so much for watching, and happy sewing!